Hey, what's up, everybody? So I actually heard about this topic. I want to say I don't know, maybe about a week ago, and it was another YouTuber who was talking about it. Oh man, I feel so bad because I don't remember her name, and it's basically in regards to the state of emergency that was declared in Puerto Rico over gender violence, and it's getting like so out of hand over there that they have to freaking declare a state of emergency. And when I heard about this topic, I one of the things that I just kind of, I know I'm like rambling right now. One of the things that I kind of want to get out there is I do my best to not touch on things that happen in Latin America like that. Occasionally, I'll talk about things in Puerto Rico. Yes, I am New Yorican. But because I am so far removed, especially when it comes to like politics and whatnot, I really don't like to impose, my views on stuff like that, because if I don't live there, then I feel like therefore it's not really my business to impose my ideologies onto basically, any foreign places pretty much. I mean, I can say, my opinions here and there, but this is something that when I heard about it, I felt very, very strongly about, and I said, F that. This is not necessarily political. This is a problem that is really, really deep in the Latin community, and it's something that you really don't hear people talk about like that. And it pisses me off because it almost seems as though because people don't talk about it, they act as if the problem is not that big, and it actually is. And this topic really resonates with me because I don't like to get into my personal life too much on here, but domestic violence is stuff that I have seen growing up. And I knew, I'm not gonna lie, it's almost as if every other girl that I knew growing up, their parents were going through domestic violence problems. They went through domestic violence themselves. I have stories for freaking days, okay? From the things that I've seen, the things that I grew up around, plus the people that I grew up around and their stories, okay? This is so much more prevalent than people make it out to be. And, it's messed up that when people are talking about Latin, things that we have, like if issues that we have, this doesn't tend to be a problem with anybody. People care more about race issues than they care about this, and they'll talk for hours and hours about race stuff. But when it comes to things like this, violence against women, violence against children, those things nobody gives a fuck about. Pardon my language, but it's the damn truth. Okay? Things that really mean something like this, which to me is way more important, nobody cares about that. So anyway, I figured it was my job to also speak about it. So I'm just going to read this, and I had a little bit of a rant in the beginning, and I just might have a little more of a rant in the end. Okay. So this one is from Al Jazeera, and I found another article also from, I think it's the Washington Post. I'll leave both of them in the description box. So it's Puerto Rico declares state of emergency over gender violence. Okay. So Puerto Rico has declared a state of emergency over its deep-rooted problem of violence against women, creating new measures demanded by activists for years to battle a deadly tide. The decision came on Sunday in the U.S. territory, which has seen sustained levels of violence that on average result in one woman's death per week. Oh my goodness. Okay. Measured in a 2019 report and exceeded in last year's estimates, echoing the problem in other Caribbean and Latin American countries. And I'm doing this and doing these little highlight things so this way people don't come up under my comments and be like, that's a Puerto Rico problem. That's a New Yorican problem. Because I know how slick some people are on here, and they don't like to take accountability for the stuff that, goes on in their countries, basically. They just like to highlight the good, right? The declaration, which also offers protection to gay and transgender people, includes measures like creating a mobile app for victims to ask for help and report attacks. Authorities will create a new program to check in with women who have taken out restraining orders against abusers, and a new committee will be responsible for enforcing policies and proposing other measures. Puerto Rico Governor Pedro, I do not know how to pronounce that, I'm not even going to try, said the order aims to combat an evil that has caused too much damage for too long. Victims have suffered the consequences of systematic machismo, inequity, discrimination, lack of education, lack of guidance, and above all, lack of action, he added in a statement. I'm just going to read the translation part. All violence is reprehensible, and we must fight it relentlessly. Gender violence is a social evil based on ignorance and attitudes that cannot have a space or tolerance in the Puerto Rico we aspire to. Yeah, all right. You know, just the fact that it's taken so long, I'm so suspicious about that. I am so, because from what I've heard, this has been, women have been fighting for this for like years now, and now it's something that they're, you know, making a thing. And I don't know, I'm trying not to be too suspicious about it, but I have a suspicious nature. Okay, the declaration defines sex or gender-based violence as conduct that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm to another person motivated by stereotypes. According to a 2019 report from nonprofit advocacy groups Proyecto Matria, and I'm not even going to try, one woman was killed every 7 days in Puerto Rico. Latin America and the Caribbean are among the most dangerous regions for women. Let's highlight this. Let's highlight this, and let's, like, why doesn't nobody talk about that? Why doesn't anybody like to talk about that? Now, what I hear a lot on here from different males in different parts of this space when it comes to the Latin men on here, is this whole notion of being proud of the machismo. Okay? I'm not saying that I necessarily have anything against certain things related to, you know, machismo tendencies. This I have a problem with. And, you know, what gets me is how, you know, I guess it's almost like the dysfunction that people are willing to pass down. It's like, it's overwhelming. The fact that it's not spoken about just goes to show you how people want or don't care enough to end the dysfunction, right? And that really bothers me a lot. You know, we'll talk about dysfunction of race all goddamn day, but this, which is actual problems where these women are getting killed and getting beaten, that's not that big of a problem, right? Meanwhile, Latin America and the Caribbean are the most dangerous regions for women. Now, it doesn't surprise me either, because I remember reading a few years back actually, that Puerto Rico was actually the most violent place in the world at the time. I haven't looked into it yet. I think the last time I checked, the most violent place was Mexico. I know that this stuff changes all the time. So when I read this, I'm not surprised, but I am at the same time, because it just kind of goes to show how even when people have Latin people on this platform speak, right? You don't hear anybody from Latin America speaking about this either. So I get kind of confused with that, where it's like, why isn't anybody talking about that? You know, it's almost as if it's a taboo subject, and it kind of is. It kind of is, because even the times that I was coming up and people used to talk to me about their stories and I used to share mine with them, it was almost as it took a lot for them to share that with anybody, which I find so strange. Because there is a power in getting that out of your system. And of course, getting away from that type of violence. There's extreme power in that. But I know that I'm rambling, but I'm going to keep going. Rights groups have drawn attention to the issue in recent years, staging protests and securing key demands such as the legislation of abortion in Argentina. Puerto Rico's declaration comes just days after widespread outrage erupted on the island over the death of nurse Angie Naomi Gonzalez at the hands of her partner who confessed to the crime, media reports said. Rights groups on the island welcomed the declaration, though not perfect, as a first step towards saving women's lives. Vilmarie Rivera, president of the Puerto Rico Domestic Violence Shelter Network, said, "The government has recognized that there is a problem and we have to address it as a priority." However, she added that such details as the way in which femicides and feminicides, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, are reported in addition to the inclusion of gender issues in the school curriculum need to be refined. Today is a great day for women and girls and all the people who have believed in the declaration of a state of emergency for gender violence, which we had been requesting for three years, said Lisa Del Flores, director of Hogar Ruth, a shelter for women's victims of violence. Now, the argument could be made that the reason that these things are going up, that these crimes are going up, is due to all of the turmoil that Puerto Rico has faced within these past few years, right? You had Hurricane Maria, and then we have COVID, right? And then you have the crazy violence over there, right? However, even though I'm speaking in regards to domestic violence in Puerto Rico and Latin America, domestic violence has no color and no economic standing. I mean, that's something that crosses all borders, all tax brackets. None of that really matters when it comes to domestic violence. And I think that people don't know enough maybe about domestic violence to recognize that, but and I think for me, the part that, I mean, it's great that they got something done for it, right? And it's also, great. I mean, it took 3 years. It's just, it feels like that's such a long time, but at the same time, it's like only 3 years people have been fighting. And when I think of the stories that I grew up around, you're talking about all the way back from the 80s and 90s, okay? And that's nothing. I've heard stories from when people first migrated here. I don't even like to get into the things that I've heard. That's how bad some of these things are. Okay? Talking about, I've heard people getting thrown down the stairs. I've heard people being beaten with irons. I've heard people being beaten with bats. I'm talking about women. I keep saying people. I'm referring to women getting beaten in these ways. I've heard so many things. I've heard a girl tell me about her mother being put on a hot stove. I've heard, I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, endless. Like, the stories are endless. And it's like, it's almost as if, what is it, like, is it that just people are just that scared? Like, are women that scared to talk about it? Or like, the only thing that I can say for me personally is that I'm grateful that it's something that I've never personally experienced, meaning that it's never happened to me personally, even though I have seen it, but it was happening with other people, and I was a child, so it's not like I had the power to really do much. It didn't happen to me, and I'm very grateful for that. But I'm not gonna lie, it was something that I was always in the back of my mind, and I was always afraid of. And I always would tell myself, like, okay, like, if this does happen, what am I gonna do, and how am I gonna handle it, and how am I gonna get past it if it does? And in a way, it's like, because I saw the things that I've seen, because I've heard the stories that I've heard, the combination of all of it, plus the research that I've done on, I had to do research on it in school, years ago also. I was always, just thinking like, how would I cope and how would I handle it if that did happen to me, right? How would I get past it? And it's just frustrating that this is just not taken as seriously as it should, and that angers me a lot. I've heard this my commentary is going to go all over the place in this video, because I've heard so many things. I've heard people say so many, like, especially when it comes to Americanized Latin women, I've heard people put us down so bad. And the thing is like, the violence that I've seen and the violence that I heard of, this is just domestic violence. I haven't even scratched the surface on the sexual violence part. That's a whole other can of worms that nobody wants to open up. Right? Nobody wants to talk about that with the Latin community. No, that's just an American thing, right? Get the fuck out of here. Because the people that I knew the most who did these things were from the island or were from different parts of Latin America. When it came to friends and whatnot, I would say 90-something% of the time, that was stuff that they brought over here too. So it's not just the American Latin people that are trash and do trashy things like this. So let's make that as abundantly clear as we possibly can. And, I know that I have a good amount of male watchers, and I know that this video might piss some of you guys off. It shouldn't. I think the only time it would piss people off, or men off, is if they agree with this. And I would think that, especially if your wife is a Latin woman, that you would feel a certain way about this stuff. Or if you have daughters that are going to grow up to be Latin women, that you would feel a certain way about this. What if your daughters experience stuff like this? So I think that you guys should feel a certain way about it. But then again, I can't tell you guys how to feel. So, because there are guys, like I said, that I've heard on here that want to bring that machismo back. And I don't know how far, I don't know these people personally, so I don't know how far they mean when it comes to their machismo and what their definition of that is. I don't know if it includes this bullshit. So, anyhow, the video is not to bash anybody. This is not for me to be accusing anybody of anything. I don't believe that this pertains to all, and I never said that it does. But what I am saying is that this is a serious problem, and it happens a whole lot more frequently than people want to talk about. And it's problems like this that are actually the real serious problems, not, how we should identify. Even though I talk about that. But so do a lot of other people, and how white people see us and how black people see us. That we'll talk about for hours, for days. People will talk about that. But I think I'll leave it at that. I'm really hoping that the next video that I do, that I can show myself. I'm dying to record in my living room. Because the lighting is a lot better there, and we finally got our sofa. It took forever to freaking come in. Oh my goodness. We ordered a sofa and it took like a month for us to get it, and now I'm just going into something else. Anyhow, I'm rambling now. I'm gonna go for now. And I know that this wasn't like a jolly happy video, and if people got offended, too goddamn bad. Don't get out of your feelings. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if you know people like this in your own family, and I'm speaking in regards to the men, and I guess the women too, but it seems like women actually stand up and speak out against this more, because it is happening to us. But if there are any strong men that are listening to this, and you know of people who are doing this, or if you know of anyone that you can help that's going through this, try to help them. I'm not gonna get too much into that. Anyhow, I'm just rambling and I'll go for now. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.